Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. I trust you had a good weekend. It's a very wet and cold Nairobi this morning. I quite like it when it's like this, to be honest. Macro thoughts. The G7 leaders taking the spectacular view of the Med from a hotel terrace in Taormina on Sicily's east coast. Studying the body language has been really quite fascinating. And I like that word arrhythmic, and I think what we have here at the heart of G7 and NATO is an arrhythmic heartbeat. Donald Trump. Home thoughts, I like this photograph: Daily Harvest, Strawberry and Peach Reviver, Green Blenders, Sweet Potato, Mango and Juice Generations, Strawberry Chia Smoothies. I've been rereading The Catcher in the Rye, and really it's a remarkably good book. If a girl looks swell when she meets you, who gives a damn if she's late? It was that kind of a crazy afternoon, terrifically cold and no sun out or anything. And you felt like you were disappearing every time you crossed a road. The catcher in the rye, that's all I really want to be. I finished reading Aunt Julia and the Scriptwriter, seventh novel by Mario Vargas Llosa. Set in Peru during the 1950s, story of an 18-year-old student who falls for a 32-year-old divorcee. The novel is based on the author's real-life experience. One can't fight with oneself, for this battle has only one loser. I like this photograph from Faith Kanja, Timau, the wheat farms. Driven up there, it's very beautiful. And then I like this photograph, driving Highway 1 from San Francisco to Los Angeles. Is a classic road trip. Nishat and I did that when the older girls were very young. Had a lovely time. Political reflections. How are you doing, Mom? Please forgive me for anything I did wrong, he said and hung up. Salman Abedi was wearing a red vest, his suicide bomb hidden in a small backpack, when he phoned his younger brother in Libya and asked him to put his mother on the line. It was about 10:20 p.m. on Sunday, and the call was short. How are you doing, Mom? Please forgive me for anything I did wrong, he said and hung up. Salman, a lanky 16-year-old at the time, joined his father as the Tripoli Revolutionary Brigade descended on the Libyan capital that summer. A year later, Ramadan snapped a photograph of the 15-year-old Hashem holding a machine gun. Hashem the Lion training, read the caption on the father's Facebook page. They were not the only ones to make the journey from Britain. Akram Ramadan, who fought alongside Ramadan Abedi, recalled there being a strong contingent known as the Manchester Fighters. We were all fighting. Drug dealers from here were fighting. Everybody went. But that changed with the fall of Colonel Gaddafi. While Salman's father stayed in Libya, he lived with his mother and siblings in Manchester, where he began to drink alcohol and smoke marijuana. Some said he fell in with local gangs. He became known for a temper and a readiness to fight. When the revolution kicked off and all these dads went to Libya to fight, the kids found freedom, Mr. Ramadan said, adding that Salman's mother, Samia, was unable to control him. And I think, I've got to give credit to Jeremy Corbyn for sort of lifting the veil on the whole situation. And I have to believe that, we've had a large number of reports about ISIS family members being taken out. I think I saw a headline of about 80. And my impression is that this was a calibrated response to something going on in the Middle East, and I think Corbyn was actually wise to talk about that. ISIS hates music for its power over minds and bodies. This has always been an issue for me, to be frank, because there's so much lovely devotional music that I like. Sufi music, for example. In short, the Saudis played Donald Trump, says Fareed Zakaria at 5 minutes and 15 seconds. If you get a chance, just listen to what he's saying in this. Start from the beginning, in fact, because it's quite a powerful critique. Liddle, nothing matches up to this combination of prize gaffes, robotic incantation of platitudinous idiocies. Talking about the Theresa May campaign, Labour fight back is being driven by women voters. Tories had a double-digit lead among women, now it's just 1 point. Corbyn is proving a much fiercer adversary than I initially gave him credit for. After summits with Trump, Merkel says Europe must take fate into own hands. Europe can no longer completely rely on its allies. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said on Sunday, pointing to bruising meetings of G7 and NATO last week. Merkel did not mention by name President Trump, who criticized major NATO allies and refused to endorse a global climate change accord. But she told a packed beer tent in Munich when I was 16, I went to Munich during the time of the beer fest, that the days when Europe could completely count on others were over to a certain extent. I've experienced this in the last few days, she said, and that is why I can only say that we Europeans must really take our fate into our own hands. Of course, in friendship with the United States of America and friendship with Great Britain, and as good neighbors, wherever that is possible, also with other countries, even with Russia. This tweet is from David Fromm. Since 1945, the supreme strategic goal in Europe of the USSR and then Russia was the severing of the US-German alliance. Trump delivered. Russian ambassador told Moscow that Kushner wanted a secret communications channel with the Kremlin. Ambassador Sergei Kislyak reported to his superiors in Moscow that Kushner's son-in-law and confidant to then President-elect Trump made the proposal during a meeting on December the 1st or 2nd at Trump Tower, according to intercepts of Russian communications that were reviewed by US officials. Kislyak said Kushner suggested using Russian diplomatic facilities in the United States for the communications. The meeting also was attended by Michael Flynn, Trump's first national security advisor. Vox is saying an effort to set up a line of communications that would be concealed from the American government suggests something more sinister. Dizzy with success, what Putin thinks of the Trump ascendancy. This is the Lowy Institute. Russian President Putin has had a brilliantly successful 12 months, notching up an impressive series of wins. In the Middle East, there's been war and treasure. Putin's military campaign in Syria, he boasted in February that the campaign was his personal initiative, was viewed by many as a remarkable feat and one that marked Moscow's successful reinsertion into Middle Eastern affairs after 8 years of strategic absence. The sweetest victory of all came on the 8th of November when a fusillade of champagne corks resounded throughout Kremlin halls as the result of the American presidential election became known. The state-controlled Russian media was euphoric. A widespread popular reaction was exemplified by one of my Russian friends, an academic who emailed me this. Trump is victorious, a victory for all people on this planet who yearn for peace, a man of common sense, a man who organizes beauty contests, not wars for oil. A man who will banish NATO from Europe, a man who opposes hostility between nations, who is for cooperation, a victory for common sense itself. Oh, what a glorious morning. The bizarre meeting with Lavrov and Ambassador Kislyak in the Oval Office appeared to generate a renewed surge of hope in the Kremlin that a major payout on their investment was close. That may explain the grotesque offer by Putin. With his imposing record of mendacity of a transcript of the meeting, though this may also have been simply an example of the mordant Putinesque humour. A well-informed Russian commentator writes that the Kremlin saw the meeting as a signal that at last the US was offering Russia full equality, and it may reasonably have hoped that Trump, receiving Henry Kissinger to advise on policy toward Russia and Ukraine, presaged a further handsome return. Meanwhile, some European leaders appear to have recognized belatedly that Putin is a geopolitical insurgent, to borrow Michael Wesley's term, bent on snuffing in the wretched little hamster, as he called the EU. And clearly he's made tremendous ground. I wrote about this on the 5th of December 2016 when I talked about the parabolic rebound of Vladimir Putin. Look at this photograph that someone tweeted in jest. I'm attending the G1 summit. And the 5th of October 2015 when I said he is a geopolitical grandmaster. After a 9-hour flight from Sicily, Air Force One just landed, ending President Trump's 9-day foreign trip. BBC Newsnight has a piece, Did Russia Help Elect Trump? Here, a funeral is being held for 8 victims of St. Samuel's monastery attack in Cairo on May the 26th. The Egyptian response was to bomb bases in Libya. And interestingly, one of those bases was tied up with the story, the Manchester story. CBS journalist, what keeps you awake at night? Mad Dog Mattis, nothing. I keep other people awake at night. North Korea fires a ballistic missile towards Japan. Foreign Affairs, and I agree with this, the Kim dynasty believes that Saddam's mistake was not in building a nuclear weapon fast enough. Currency markets, euro dollars down at 111.73, dollar index is up at 97.50, Japanese yen 111.26, Swiss franc 0.9755, the pound 128.28, the Australian dollar, let's have a look at that, 0.7434, Indian rupee 64.565, South Korean 111.20.54, barely moved really on this increased missile launching. Brazilian real soft at 326.07, Egyptian pound 18.125, the rand still firm around 12.90, but Zuma has lived to fight another day. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. Look, I think we're getting a rate hike in June, but nevertheless, I still think we're going to see the dollar index trend towards 93.50. We're at 97.50 now. Euro dollar, a little bit softer ahead of Draghi. We're at 111.74. My target is 114.50. Commodity markets, let's take a look at where gold is, 1266.94. Look, geopolitical risks remain elevated, and gold is a geopolitical proxy. Crude oil came off. We're now at $49.80 in New York. I think we're going to go down, down, down. Reliance Communications extends tumble on mounting debt concerns. Shares and bonds of billionaire Anil Ambani's Reliance Communications tumble, extending their declines from last week amid mounting concerns about the Indian phone carrier's debts. The stock fell as much as 20%, hitting an intraday record low of 20.6 rupees in Mumbai trading on Monday. Company's $300 million junk-rated note due in 2020 fell as much as 12.9 cents on the dollar to 71.1 cents, according to Bloomberg. Economic Times reported on Monday that Reliance was behind on its loan obligations, in the latest blow spooking investors of what was once India's second-largest mobile phone carrier. Last week, Reliance Communications bonds plunged 17 cents and shares tumbled 16% amid mounting concerns over the company's debt. Sub-Saharan Africa, Donald Trump poses with African leaders in Sicily, Italy on Saturday. And then this is another photograph from the G7 from AFP. Industrialization in Africa more a marathon than a sprint, says the Economist. saying, over the past 15 years, sub-Saharan African economies have expanded at an average rate of about 5% a year, enough to have doubled output over the period. They were helped largely by a commodities boom that was caused in part by rapid urbanization in China. From 1980 to 2013, the African manufacturing sector's contribution to the continent's total economy actually declined from 12 to 11%, leaving it with the smallest share of any developing region. In Africa, manufacturing provides just over 6% of all jobs, a figure that's barely changed over more than 3 decades to 2008. In Asia, the figure grew from 11 to 16% over the same period. Afrovisual data, countries with the most terrorism fatalities, 2006 to 2015. Then number of events involving rioters and protesters by event type in Africa, again Afrovisual data. And then top African recipients of US aid disbursements: Ethiopia, South Sudan, Kenya, Nigeria, Uganda. They're obviously at risk from Trump. President Zuma defeated a no-confidence motion against him at a meeting of top officials of the ruling ANC party on Sunday. South African all shares up 6.6% this year. The rand is around the 12.90 level. I think it got ahead of itself on expectations that Zuma was going to be toppled. I don't think it's going to be that easy to unseat. Egyptian pound, where according to one report they received $1 billion of FDI since they raised interest rates, is trading at 18.12. Nigerian all shares up 8.15% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is up 13.88% year to date. Mozambique has missed its latest loan payment as restructuring stalls. State-run company in Mozambique skipped $134 million in payments on a government-guaranteed loan. The third time this year, the southern African nation failed to meet its obligations as a standoff with creditors blocks debt restructuring talks. The government had hoped to complete a restructuring of its commercial foreign debt by January, but a group of investors holding its 2023 Eurobond, which went into default at the start of the year, has refused to start formal negotiations until the government publishes an audit of the hidden loans. The discovery of the undisclosed borrowing prompted the IMF to suspend aid to the country last year. Kroll Inc. completed the audit on May 12 after 3 delays, but the report is yet to be made public. Then the FT, writing about this same situation: in a normal world, Nyusi would resign. In our world, they'll just restructure the loans with apologies all round. The donors love it in Maputo. It's a nice city. They don't want to be unemployed in paradise. Put a photograph I took of the city from the sea, Maputo from the sea. And in October last year, I wrote about Mozambique from boom to bust, a cautionary tale. And I said Mozambique popped onto the global radar in 2011 when huge gas reserves were discovered offshore. We visited in 2012, and I recall the wife being seriously astonished when we jumped in a taxi and the driver turned out to be Portuguese. I said Mozambique could be the next Qatar as we stuffed ourselves with wonderfully flavoursome tiger prawns. They are probably the best I've ever had anywhere. Uhuru Kenyatta: Africa is the world's new frontier for trade and investment. Said this at G7. Feb 2017 was the first time on record that the real value of mobile money transactions in Kenya fell year on year, down 0.4%. Very worrying sign. John Ashbourne. The last dance: work begins on Africa's tallest building. Does the start of Africa's tallest building signal the end of Kenya's boom? Kenya's traffic-clogged capital be the next Dubai? Two large Dubai-based investors, Hass Petroleum and White Lotus, seem to think so. On May 23rd, they formally started construction of what they claim will be Africa's tallest building. Out of a vast hole in the ground and up a hill, a neighborhood full of government offices, will rise 2 towers. The tall are some 300 meters high and named the Pinnacle. For comparison, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, the world's tallest building, is 828 meters high. One will contain a hotel, the other some 150 swanky apartments or residences. A helipad will jut out of the roof of the taller tower, allowing the truly plutocratic to be whisked in over the traffic jams from the airport. Yet the property boom is now slowing. Prime residential rents fell by 6% in 2016, according to Knight Frank, another property firm. In some corners of Nairobi, half-built houses have sat for months with no progress. It is not clear there are enough Kenyans who can afford to rent them. Most forecasters expect economic growth to slow because of uncertainty about the Kenya general election in August. Investment in infrastructure has helped to fuel the economy, but this could tail off after the election. My piece over the weekend was about how the Nairobi Securities Exchange has entered a bull market. According to the popular definition, a bull market begins when a stock, commodity or index rises 20% from a low. Bank of America Merrill Lynch Global Research defines a cyclical bull market as a rally of at least 20% without a 20% correction, using daily closing basis data. By that criteria, the Nairobi All Share, which is plus 10.3% this year and at 9-month highs, entered a bull market last week, having rallied 22.71% since March 9. The Nairobi NSE 20, which is plus 8.04% in 2017 and also at a 9-month high, similarly entered a bull market last week, having rallied 23.41% since January 30, 2017. I recall the deep despondency in early March, and it is oftentimes said that a bull market has to climb a wall of worry. That wall of worry has included an August 8 general election, and we have form in this regard, and an off-the-charts food inflation at 21% year-on-year last. Others are a sharp slowdown in private sector credit growth, expected to be negative in the first quarter of this year, and a rate cap which has rationed credit to riskier borrowers. GDP is expected to take a hit, with Yvonne Mahanga of Renaissance Capital downshifting her 2017 GDP forecast to 4.2%. The Nairobi bull market has already served up some mouth-watering year-to-date returns. Safaricom is up 13.577% and underpins the bull market, while the banks, after a big wobble, have come back with a bang. KCB is up 35.65%, Standard Chartered is up 10.58%, equity up 26.66%. Kenyan has exploded 30.973% higher this year. The rally has been broad-based and has gathered momentum. A lot of folks, particularly in the banking stocks, are chasing dividends, in many cases double-digit ones. So we will surely walk into a correction in these shares when the dividends are paid. The banks have been big buyers of Government of Kenya debt, as evidenced in their Q1 earnings releases. For the banks, government paper is treated as risk-free on their balance sheets, and anything within 200 basis points of the rate cap has looked a no-brainer. Local institutions have also carried an overweight position in bonds. Returns at 12.5% looked outstanding when compared to the stock market, which was posting negative returns. However, just take Safaricom plus 13.577% year to date. There is no bond that is going to get close to that on an annualized basis. The next leg of this bull market will be driven by local institutions who will need to chase returns. Actually, and interestingly, a number of African markets have entered bull market territory, and even Nigeria is on the cusp. This bull market in Nairobi and other parts of Africa was externally generated and at a macro level. You see it in Nairobi, you see it in the South Africa's rand trading a great deal more robustly. You see it in Sub-Saharan African sovereign Eurobond yields, which have rallied sharply, and the government of Kenya should swoop on this opportunity to sell debt, in fact. Safaricom share price data, it's up 13.577% so far this year. NIC Bank is under pressure to repay 2 billion shillings worth of loans, breach of the terms attached to 2 billion shillings worth of long-term loans in the year ended December, which has seen the debt reclassified as being payable within 1 year. This means NIC could face an unscheduled debt redemption burden unless it secures waivers from its lenders. So keep an eye on that. The share price of NIC, if you're interested, is up 16.346%, and they reported, I thought, quite good first quarter earnings. Kenya Airways is up 18.803% year to date. Nairobi All Share up 10.3% in 2017, fresh 9-month highs. NSE 20 up 8.04%, 9-month highs as well. Once again, thank you for stopping by.